when it comes to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I feel very indifferent towards this film. I don't have an incredibly strong reaction to it. I don't hate it, because going in, I thought I was going to hate it more than I thought I did. But I also didn't like it. I also don't think it's good. And so at the end of the day, Dial of Destiny to me just felt like a waste of time, and it was kind of pointless. Because when you get to the end of the Dial of Destiny and you look at the status quo at the end of the film, you kind of just realize, oh, nothing really changed that much from the ending of Crystal Skull, apart from the fact that Indy no longer has a son because his son is dead. In many ways, Dial of Destiny felt like it was a $300 million expense just to kill off Shia LaBeouf. Why? Honestly, I feel like killing off Mutt was such a detriment to the potential of the story for Dial of Destiny, because the status quo at the beginning of Dial of Destiny is that Indy is alone and sad in this dingy apartment, he's getting divorced from Marion, his son is dead, and he's retiring, and it's like, okay, what the hell happened to Indiana Jones? How did he end up like this? I feel like the more interesting story would have been the story that leads us into Dial of Destiny, because when Indy is talking to Helena about how Mutt died and how that ruined his relationship and marriage with Marion, that stuff was interesting. That's probably the best scene in the whole film, and it's like, why did we not get to see this stuff? You could have recast if you didn't want to bring back Shia LaBeouf. Just do it! It's really not that hard to recast Mutt. I mean, Miles Teller is right there. You could have just got Miles Teller to be Mutt. Also, the more you think about it, Mutt being the one to purposefully volunteer to go to Vietnam doesn't make any sense, seeing as how in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he was very much a greaser. He seemed very firmly against a lot of forms of establishment, so why would he be the one to sign up to go to Vietnam? That doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't it make more sense if Indy was the one to force Mutt to go to Vietnam, seeing as how Indy is a war hero, and he would try to instill some sort of patriotic nature towards his son, you know? That would just make more sense, but then again, this film doesn't make a lot of sense. Killing off Mutt in a lot of ways, to me, just feels like Crystal Skull erasure, which is just not cool, because I don't care how much you dislike Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's not that bad. Honestly, I don't get why they had to just emasculate Indiana Jones, make him a sad sack loser, down on his luck, getting divorced. Why did we have to negate the happy ending to Crystal Skull in order to tell this story? I say story, there isn't really a story here. Indy doesn't really go through a character arc, because James Mangold has been saying that this is the story where Indiana Jones gets his mojo back and he becomes the hero that we know and love, but he kind of doesn't. You watch the film and you go, okay, so throughout half of it, he's kind of pointless and is sidelined. That's what I don't get. How is Indiana Jones Harrison Ford sidelined in his own movie? He's sidelined throughout most of the film, and then when we get to the end, when they do the bizarre time travel stuff, which honestly, I'm really, apathetic towards. Apathetic, is that the right word? Honestly, I'm so apathetic towards the time travel stuff, because on one hand, it's the most interesting part of the film. On the other hand, it didn't give me, an intense feeling of positivity or negativity. It was just something bizarre and wild that happened, and I just went, okay, I guess. But anyways, yeah, Indy is, back in time, and he's like, I just want to die. I don't care. I don't want to go back home. I've got nothing left. I want to die. And then Phoebe Waller-Bridge just, knocks him out. And then all of a sudden, we get to the ending, Indy's back in his apartment, Marion's there, and then they just reconcile. They literally do the same scene from Raiders, where does it hurt? Here. Marion's all just are you back? And he's like, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. And you get to that ending and you go, wow, this film's story was just so pointless. Look, I'm gonna say this now, James Mangold is no Steven Spielberg, and that to me is the biggest problem with Dial of Destiny. I'm sitting there, I'm watching the first 20 minutes, which is supposed to be the throwback to the Spielberg era of Indiana Jones. It's supposed to be Indy in his prime in the middle of World War II, and he's fighting Nazis and doing all that stuff. And I just felt the whole time this gut feeling of, this isn't Spielberg. Whatever this isn't Indiana Jones. Steven Spielberg is so integral to the DNA of Indiana Jones. George Lucas is so integral to the DNA of Indiana Jones. And this movie just doesn't feel like Indiana Jones, I'm sorry to say. It just feels like some B-movie, generic action-adventure film that's trying to rip off Indiana Jones, but they just happen to have the license for Indiana Jones's whip, and fedora, and leather jacket, and the music. And it always just feels hollow. The de-aging of Harrison Ford, whilst at times looks very, very good, most of the time, it just doesn't look right. His face is too bright, it's too shiny, his face is too flat, and not to mention, they didn't de-age his voice, he just sounds like an 80-year-old man with a younger man's face. I think that's just the saddest part of that opening, is that on paper, I can see what Mangold is trying to do, but it just doesn't feel right. When Indy gets on the train and it's all da 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 da, I felt nothing. Just the whole film looks off. Indiana Jones is prime 80s filmmaking. It's supposed to look filmic. It's supposed to look dirty and gritty. You're supposed to see the film grain, the halation, all that wonderful film bro goodness. That's what you're supposed to see with an Indiana Jones film. And this film doesn't have it. It's all clean. They try to fake in digital grain, but it doesn't look right. The whole film itself, the lens choices, it all feels wrong. Spielberg has a very specific style, and normally he tends to shoot everything on like a 50mm, sometimes they go a bit wider, but for the most part he normally shoots everything at 55, and only uses telephoto lenses for specific shots. Mangold, it seems, just loves the telephoto look, and so because of that he applies it to Indiana Jones, and it just doesn't look right. Not to mention the fact that the film also has a very CGI heavy gloss to it, and it's kind of what people have with Crystal Skull. There are moments in Crystal Skull, namely in the jungle fight, where you do see a bit of the CGI gloss. But for the most part, Crystal Skull is an amazing looking film because it's shot by Janusz Kaminski and Spielberg is also behind the camera. And I love the aesthetic of Crystal Skull. Crystal Skull is my favorite looking Indiana Jones film. And Douglas Slocombe? This guy, he's the original DP for Spielberg's Indiana Jones original trilogy. And they're all amazing looking films as well. Mangold's Indiana Jones film doesn't look right. It's too glossy, too commercialized. Why the hell did an Indiana Jones film cost almost $300 million to make? Like, honestly, what were they thinking? Huh? Also, another issue with the cinematography in this film is the fact that it doesn't have this Spielberg magic to it. Spielberg, for the most part, likes to capture a lot of information in one shot. And this film doesn't do that. It plays modern day filmmaking where there's a lot of coverage and a lot of cuts. That's not what Indiana Jones is. You need the Spielberg magic. There's a tuk-tuk chase in Tangier in this film, and it doesn't hold a candle to the motorcycle chase in Last Crusade, or even the motorcycle chase in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That stuff is all fantastic. And the tuk-tuk chase in Dial of Destiny is whatever. Now let's move on to Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. Look, Indiana Jones is one of my childhood heroes. I absolutely love and adore Harrison Ford as an actor. He is phenomenal, and for the most part, he does a good job. But there were a lot of moments in this film where I just went, oh, he's way too old to be doing this. And it's mainly the stuff at the beginning, when he's on the run from the Nazis and government agents in present day. It doesn't look right. He's doing like the old man shuffle because he's like too old to be running and doing all these crazy stuff. It all just feels sluggish and slow and just inauthentic. And the thing is, I know Harrison Ford really wanted to tell this last Indiana Jones story, but it's the direction they went with this film that is the problem. This film, specifically because they have James Mangold at the helm, should have been the more pensive character study of Indiana Jones. What does Indiana Jones do on his last adventure? How does he handle mortality? The film doesn't really cover that. They sideline him for half the time because they want to focus more on Helena Shaw, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and it's like, why? We're all here to see Indiana Jones. Why are you sidelining him? Because look, the overall arc of this film is supposed to be Indy gets his mojo back. He starts off the film sad, depressed, a sad sack loser, a grumpy old man, no wife, no son. He's feeling unsatisfied with his job and is retiring. And then throughout the course of the film, he goes on one last adventure, one final hurrah, and by the end he finds back his mojo and wins everything back in the end. But it just doesn't feel authentic enough in this film. And that's mainly because this film doesn't focus on Indy half the time. It focuses on Helena, and it's like, we're all here to see Indiana Jones, man. No one cares about Helena. Get back. And look, the sad old man trope doesn't really work for me half the time because I just have questions. What happened to Indy's nice house in the original trilogy? Where's it gone? He has it in Crystal Skull. Where's it in this? What happened to the nice university he was at? Where's Jim Broadbent? Now he's working in some like dingy little university where students don't care. What happened to get Indy to this point? Did Marion have the house? I genuinely don't understand what happened. But the problem with Indy's character arc is that Indy isn't active in his own character development. By the end, he kind of just wants to die, and all of a sudden he's forced to go back to reality in present day, and then he like somehow reconciles with Marion, and that's it. And it's like, oh, so Indy didn't actually do anything to change. He just, like, got everything he wanted at the end. And now, look, I've alluded to her long enough. Let's talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena Shaw. She's not as bad as I thought she was going to be, because, like, 2/3 through the film, she has, like, a character change, and, like, she becomes somewhat tolerable. But in the first 2/3, she's an asshole. She is such a horrible person. Now, her beef with Indy at points is justifiable. He did technically abandon her because the whole thing is that her father, who is Toby Jones, is like obsessed with the Dial of Archimedes, the Antitheka, whatever the hell. He's obsessed with that. It drives him mad. He eventually dies, and Indy kind of just abandons Helena, who is his goddaughter, which is just also a weird retcon. Like, what is the point? Why do we need Helena in this film? We could have brought back Short Round. We could have also brought back Mutt. Again, you could have just recast Mutt. You don't have to bring back Shia LaBeouf. Just do it! And if anything now, it leaves the dangling thread of Short Round to be very awkward, because it's like, what the hell happened to Short Round post Temple of Doom? I'll come back to this though. For the most part, Helena does have somewhat of a grievance with Indy that is understandable. But then, for the most part, she's also just an asshole. She leaves him to die because she locks him in the library with all the Nazis. She is constantly just like backstabbing him and being mean to him, saying horrible things to him, basically going, yeah, I'm gonna let all these people kill you just because you abandoned me. And it's like, what the hell is your problem, lady? It also doesn't help with the fact that her character is like super narcissistic. She's all like, oh, look at me, I'm so smart and wonderful and gorgeous and beautiful. And it's like, that doesn't fit the character and the actor you've cast. I have no issues with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I actually really like a lot of her stuff. Killing Eve Season 1 in particular, I think that stuff is great. But if you wanted to cast the narcissistic, stunning person, you don't cast Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Phoebe Waller-Bridge has the very British girl next door look to her. She's not like this like sex symbol. It's just a bit baffling if you're gonna do that. Also, she has this Moroccan mob boss ex-fiance that she basically toyed around with, dumped him as he proposed to her, took the engagement ring, and then sold it. What a bitch! Her character is genuinely annoying throughout the first 2/3, and then all of a sudden, in the best scene of the film, where Indy explains to her the story behind Mutt's demise and the falling apart of his marriage, she suddenly goes all sympathetic and is just like, actually, no, I do care about Indy. I do think he's a nice guy. And it's like, what the hell? What? She mellows out after that, but it's kind of like, why did we have to wait till this long to make her somewhat, like, okay? Look, the thing is with Helena is that she's not a good character, but she also could have been much worse. The trailers made her seem much worse. And I think there's also a bunch of things they've cut out, because I remember them releasing a clip of the tuk-tuk chase, and there's a whole bit where she starts lecturing Indy about how, you know, he stole from indigenous cultures and blah, 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 and it's like, oh god, is she really gonna lecture Indiana Jones? Like, really? But no, that's not in the film, so I feel like they cut that out in editing. Or maybe that was some kind of Mandela effect or something, but I thought her character was going to be much more insufferable. And don't get me wrong, she's not a great character, she's very, very mean and horrible. But what I will say is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge does a good job at bringing her back from being super detestable, because Phoebe Waller-Bridge does have charisma, she is a good actor, and I feel like in the hands of a lesser actress, she could have been much more obnoxious. And then we've also got Mads Mikkelsen as the villain in this, and look, Mads Mikkelsen is great, he's always great, but his character's not that great. Like, he's this Nazi that Indy fought once upon a time and was interested in Archimedes' dial, and then Indy stole the dial from him, and then when the Nazis lost the war, he then joined NASA as an American scientist, and then all of a sudden he has this big plan to find Archimedes' dial so he can go back in time to kill Hitler, and then so he's gonna take over Hitler's place and become the new Hitler, and it's like, okay, sure. It's not very interesting. Also, the character himself is just so uninteresting that I don't even know their name. In the old Indiana Jones films, you had Belloc, you had Mola Ram, you had Donovan and Elsa, and then you also had Spalko, Kate Blanchett. I genuinely don't know Mads Mikkelsen's villain's name, and that is a problem. Also, that's kind of a nitpick I have with modern day films. This is a nitpick that applies to modern day blockbusters as a whole and just films in general. They don't often repeat the character's name or introduce our characters in memorable ways so that the name sticks in their brain. Like, you think of some of the classic fictional characters like Indiana Jones, James Bond, Frodo Baggins, Bilbo Baggins, Jon Snow, Paul Atreides, Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, all that stuff. In those films, they all tend to have really epic introductions. Or the way they're introduced to the audience, the way the characters talk about them makes them feared or memorable. You don't get that. Like, Mads Mikkelsen does not get a triumphant, this is the day that you'll remember as the day that you almost called Captain Jack Sparrow. None of that. He just gets, like, whacked in the face by, like, a tree or something, which should have killed him, but it doesn't. And then he just comes back and is like, I hate you, Indy, you stole my dial, I'm gonna get the dial back and I'm gonna become the new Hitler. And it's like, okay. What I will say though is that I do like how by the end, when he's trying to enact his big plan and they didn't account for continental drift and them going through the time portal was not sending them through to the right period of 1939, he was just like, no, send me back, send me back. I kind of like that. I think that was kind of fun. But other than that, the character is very unmemorable. And then, yeah, the film brings back old characters like Sallah, like Marion, and it's great to see them. What they do with Sallah by bringing him back is fine. Like, they make him an Egyptian immigrant that migrated to America, and now he's a taxi driver. Stereotypical, but yeah, it works, whatever. And then he, like, drops Indy off to the airport, which was just a dumb subplot. Like, again, if you actually, like, look at the plot for this film, there are a lot of nitpicks and plot holes that you can point out. Like, Indy is, like, a wanted felon by the FBI, but then they let him board a plane, and it's like, what? And then they're not even being chased by the FBI half the time. Anyways, Sallah drops Indy off at the airport, and it's all just like, Indy, I miss the sea, I miss the desert, let me go on this adventure with you. And Indy's just like, nah, leave me be, Sallah, it's fine, don't get involved. And then Sallah's all like, oh, whatever, give him hell, Indiana Jones. They cut down that kind of epic line delivery with a joke, and I just went, of course, typical Hollywood. We have to cut down a cool, epic, sincere moment for a cheap joke. Because Indy's crossing the road and then a car almost runs into him and Sallah's like, give him hell, Indiana Jones. And it's like, why'd you do that? Also, Karen Allen looks fantastic for her age, by the way. When she showed up, I was like, wow, she looks stunning for her age. But then also they bring in like Antonio Banderas to be this guy that like owns a ship that Indy and Helena use. And it's kind of like, why didn't you just make that character Short Round? Now, Antonio Banderas' character dies, and I'm not saying that you kill off Short Round, but it would have been nice if Indy was like, hey, yeah, I know this guy that owns this boat, and it's Short Round. Like, that just makes sense, but instead it's Antonio Banderas. And honestly, you can tell that Lucasfilm is kicking themselves right now. Because of the success of Everything Ever All at Once, and Ke Huy Quan winning Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars, they're all just like, shit, why the fuck did we not bring him back? Fuck! And honestly, I hope they don't bring him back anymore now, because Dial of Destiny was the place to do it. I don't want a Short Round spin-off thing because I don't think I'm going to see Indy and Short Round reunite anymore. So it's a wasted opportunity, and even if Harrison Ford does show up in a potential Short Round Disney Plus spin-off movie or show, and he shows up for like a 2-second cameo, no, put it in the main Indiana Jones film. It's not going to have the Spielberg magic to it. Also, speaking of Short Round, there's this like Moroccan kid that follows Indy and Helena around. And he's basically Moroccan Short Round, but he doesn't have any of the charisma. Like, he's a good actor. He does a fine job in the film. But, doesn't have anything memorable to do like Short Round. He's not loud and fun and bubbly like Short Round is. He's just there. Also, the action-adventure elements to the film aren't really that exciting for the most part. The film really feels like Indiana Jones when Helena and Indy find the tomb of Archimedes. That whole little like 10-minute section, that felt like Indiana Jones, but even still, it felt like a watered-down version of the scene in Crystal Skull where Martin and Indy were looking at, oh, I know him, I know it. Oxley took the skull to Akator, and then he brought it back to the tomb of... Oh, I'm going to Google it. Oh, wait, is it Orleano? I haven't Googled it yet. Is it Orleano? The tomb of Orleano. Orleano, that's it. I knew it was Orleano. Anyways, I digress. Yeah, the bit where Indy and Helena are exploring the tomb of Archimedes, it did just feel like a watered-down version of the scene with Indy and Mutt from Crystal Skull. But also, that's where the film was kind of interesting again, because that's where Harrison Ford felt like Indiana Jones and was like doing Indiana Jones things and doing the thing where he was lecturing and being a teacher. That's what I missed about Indy in this film. He didn't have a passion for the adventure. But yeah, I really don't have like much of like a negative hatred towards Dial of Destiny. A lot of it is pretty forgettable, and in my brain, I don't even think I'd count this as like an Indiana Jones entry. Like, it's just the thing that has the name. But to me, it doesn't belong in the same category as all of Spielberg's films. Like, even if you don't like Crystal Skull, I personally love Crystal Skull. And to me, that's the ending of Indiana Jones. The nice, happy ending. It's nice. He gets a family. He's married. All good. This film just takes away his family for no reason, but then he reconciles with Marion at the end, and it's like, but why? There's a lot of counterproductive ideas in this. Like, again, why is Toby Jones' character an original character? Why couldn't Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character be, like, the daughter of Mac from Crystal Skull? You could have brought back Ray Winstone, and it would have made more sense. But no, we just had to, like, invent some random character that Indy met back in the past and was, like, best friends with. It just didn't work for me. And the whole concept itself was just... Why did we have to kill off Indy's son? Again, just recast. You could have had fun adventures with Indy and his son, or you could have just had Mark be happily retired. He fought in Vietnam, got injured, and then went off to go fix motorcycles elsewhere or something. Or Mark has his own family and Indy's a grandfather. No, we had to make him a sad sack. What is the point? Why? Because again, you get to the end, and nothing really changes from Crystal Skull apart from the fact that Mutt's dead. I guess that's the one takeaway I can say that I'm sort of glad about with Dial of Destiny, is the fact that it's so just unmemorable. I have such an apathetic feeling towards this that I don't really care that it exists, and I don't really ever feel the need to rewatch it. Again, it's nice to see Harrison Ford come back for some sort of closure, but realistically, when it comes to legacy sequels, Blade Runner 2049 is the much better legacy sequel. Deckard in that film feels like a more complete character. Harrison Ford feels more impactful when he shows up in that film. In Dial of Destiny, he is essentially the side character. Indy doesn't go through a powerful arc in this film. It doesn't work. And because of that, it really just makes me go, yeah, Crystal Skull was the best ending for Indy that we could have gotten. Again, it felt like Spielberg and Lucas saying goodbye. Indy is happy now, he has a family. That's it. That's kind of it. That's where the story ends. I know people don't like Crystal Skull, but I have a feeling that people, when they see Dial of Destiny, and if they go back to revisit Crystal Skull, will appreciate it much more because it actually tries to do something new and interesting. The only new interesting thing in Dial of Destiny is when they do the time travel thing, and even then they kind of half-ass it. Like, it technically doesn't make any sense because, like, what? They go back to Archimedes' time during the Battle of Sicily, where Archimedes dies in that battle. So how does Archimedes finish the dial off, like, when he's supposed to die in this battle? But even still, it's bizarre, and it kind of would have been interesting. But also, you can tell that that's not the original ending, because I do not believe for a fact that Phoebe Waller-Bridge knocked out Indy, and then that's it, it cuts to black. She just, like, lifts him back into the plane, and then they fly back to present day. I don't believe that. Aren't there leaks about the original ending where Phoebe Waller-Bridge takes Indy's hat and whip and then goes through all the adventures doing all the things that Indy did before, but better? I could be making that up, but even still, you can tell that that was not the originally shot ending, and there's like a massive set of reshoots to fix their ending because, again, Indy has no character arc. Sure, he's different at the beginning of the film than he is at the end of the film, but you don't see the journey and the growth throughout the story. I mean, to be honest, this film doesn't even really have a story. Anyways, to wrap this up, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, to me, was a pointless film. And I'm so apathetic towards this film, I have no qualms in going, yeah, this film doesn't exist. There is no Indiana Jones 5. To me, it's always Indiana Jones 1, 2, 3, and 4. I genuinely have no desire to revisit this film, apart from, like, the two scenes that I liked, which was, one, the scene where Indy talks about Mutt's death, and then two, the last scene between Indy and Marion, because nostalgia bait. Other than that, Dial of Destiny feels so un-Indiana Jones that I don't care. Which honestly is very baffling for me to say because Indiana Jones is my thing. Growing up, Indiana Jones was one of my heroes. I used to watch those movies religiously. It was the thing between me and my mum. We love Indiana Jones. And Dial of Destiny was just... I can't believe I'm saying that about an Indiana Jones film. I'd rather I hated and despised this film. But I just feel apathetic. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It was whatever. But what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, see you guys next time.